At 10, we have Rogue. Rogue is complicated because of the touched upgrade she has. You have this basically every turn set aside to put somewhere. Put it on a villain, you get Retaliate. Now your events have status effects. Put it on a minion, now your attacks have Overkill. Put it on an ally, now you have the Aerial trait, which makes your forwarding card deal extra threat removal. There's a lot of decisions to make here. But then you have Superpower Adaptation. This is a card which, when put on a friendly character, lets you look into that player's discard pile and take an event. So not only do you want to have touch in the right place for your signature events to work, but you might want it in the right place to take different events. Let's say you're in 4-player, you now need to track 4 different players' discard piles, including, your own, obviously, and what allies they have out to make sure what parts of that discard pile you can actually take from to make sure you don't miss out on any really good opportunities. And that is very complicated. At number 9, we have Shadowcat, and she's mostly complicated because of the defense rules and attack timing and interrupt and response timing. How you change from phase to solid form would depend on attacking and defending, and the nuance of that, which I'm not going to go into too much in this video because it's a whole topic, can be quite a lot to learn. Once you've learned it, not too bad, and she'll make a lot more sense in many cases. But also, if you ever do have a hand with multiple attacks and defense cards in hand, the exact way you want to play those out can be pretty complicated, and it can take a lot of thinking through to do it in the most optimal way. So Shadowcat definitely deserves her place on this list, and you don't want to get stuck in solid form at the end of the player phase if you can help it. Avoiding that trap is definitely one of the biggest kind of learning curves with her. At number 8, we have Storm, and I promise I'm not just picking the female X-Men heroes, but I do genuinely believe this is where she should be, so we have another one here. And she's mostly complicated because of her weather support cards. She has this little deck of cards which you can have one out at a time. You change them with your action on your hero card, and they have global effects. The Thunderstorm gives each character +1 attack. That means Storm, her allies, any minions out, and the villain. And scale this up into multiplayer, suddenly this is affecting a lot of things. And yes, getting +1 attack is really good, but if you leave it there when the villain phase rolls around, guess what? Now everyone at the table is getting attacked for +1 damage. Minions are attacking for +1. One of the worst things is a quick strike minion attacking for +1. Things can just get kind of complicated, and there could be big benefits from being in one form, but also some downsides, and you have to weigh those up and figure it out and try not to mess up anybody's turn, because it can be pretty devastating. But on the flip side, it can be absolutely amazing. So I do recommend Storm in multiplayer, but it definitely takes a lot to do it optimally. So be careful. And yeah, that's what makes Storm complicated. Before we go any further, I just want to talk about what makes a character complicated. What am I really talking about here? Is it difficulty in playing? Does it, require skill? Or is it just the wordiness or rules things? Well, it's kind of a mixture. I'm kind of amalgamating all these different things because I could probably do a different top 10 for everything you see on the screen here, all these different things I'm taking into account. I've already talked a little bit about avoiding traps. You don't want touched in the wrong place. You don't want to end up in solid form on Shadowcat at the end of your turn. And a lot of characters have moving pieces, especially newer characters. Cards which move cards around, which talk to other cards, which influence other cards, which means getting one piece of that puzzle slightly less optimal than you want can have a big knock-on effect. And yeah, there's a lot of things going on. Other characters are quite difficult to learn. They maybe have an unusual style, but once you learn that style, it's quite easy to play them and do well with them. It's just that initial understanding, that initial learning curve. That's kind of what I'm working with here, kind of an amalgamation based on how I feel, but I know everyone watching this is going to have different heroes here in a different order. The other thing I would love to talk to you guys about is Into the AM, which isn't a sponsor for this video, but they are kind of partnered with me. It's a fantastic clothing brand that I'm actually wearing right now. I think the clothes are really cool. Even if I wasn't kind of partnered, I genuinely still think I would be endorsing them like this. But take them with a pinch of salt. It's up to you guys. But code VTheory. If you go to intotheam.com/VTheory, you get 10% off. Yes, it's an affiliate link. I get a little bit back from that, but it helps support the channel. And you get 10% off what I think are genuinely very cool clothes. They have graphic tees, they have cool shirts. So please check it out. And otherwise, let's continue the video. At number 7, we have Colossus, who is difficult because he spends toughs in very interesting ways. Any character can have a tough status card. He can have 2 at once, but he can also spend them as well as use them defensively, and spending them is generally better than letting them, take damage for you. And if you have a whole hand of his different cards, you have a difficult decision in making, what are you going to spend those toughs on? If you have Iron Will, you have a lot of card draw. You can draw a lot of cards by spending and generating a lot of toughs. And what that really means is you have to keep readapting every time you draw new cards because your turn could change, and the best way to play your turn can change. Generally, any kind of build that draws cards partway through its turn has to adapt a lot, and that is kind of a level of complexity on itself. But also spending this unique resource of his, toughs are something only he can spend like this, It is pretty complicated, pretty fun, and definitely means Colossus was not the simple, straightforward bruiser I initially thought he was going to be. He's a very complicated character. At number 6, we have the Special Doctor herself, Spider, SPDR, Penny Parker, however you want to say it. She is complicated because she's a free hand-sized hero with 2 kind of identity cards which flip in weird ways, but the main thing is she has these interface upgrades which can be spent for a bonus to her basic abilities, like boosting her basic attack or defense, or they can be spent as resources, and deciding how you want to spend them, either to boost her basic abilities or to spend on cards, is quite an interesting decision. Sometimes it's obvious and almost formulaic. Other times it's pretty complicated and you have a lot of complicated sort of priorities conflicting. And then you also have things like, do I want to set up more? Do I need to keep tempo? Which for a free hand-sized hero that starts a little bit slow initially can be pretty tough. Add on to that some sequencing puzzles, and you have yourself a very complicated character. Moving into the big 5, we have Miss Marvel, who's one of those characters that maybe isn't super difficult once you know how to play her, but she has a very different style, very easy to catch new players out, and if I had a penny for every time I heard a player say, I don't really like her Rodrigo supports, I don't bother with them much, I would be very frustrated, and I am, I guess, but very rich. I think her Ultra Ego supports are fantastic, and it's kind of a different way to play, to flip down and use these weird cards which move cards around, because Bruno can hold cards, Amir can put a card from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck. If you do that multiple times, you get to stack up combos beneath your deck, and then you get to draw a card, which is pretty good. But the main difficult, kind of a weird thing about her is she doesn't want to use her basic abilities, don't want to fort, doesn't want to attack, doesn't want to defend with her stats, 1 in each. Terrible. She wants to use her Morphogenetics ability, which lets you exhaust to bring a card you played from an attack, fort, or defense card at least, back to your hand, and that can open up some really interesting combos. But you need to know the timing of how responses work, because let's say I clear all the threat from a scheme, I play Turn the Tide to deal 3 damage in response to that, I can then respond to that response to put Turn the Tide back in my hand, and then respond again to the thing that Turn the Tide originally was responding to, clearing that threat. It can be a lot. It's really, really interesting though, and really fun. And the final part is one of my favorite parts, probably my favorite part about her. Shrink and Embiggen, these are upgrades which you can exhaust to boost forwarding and attacks respectively. Embiggen will increase the damage an attack does. So let's say I play Uppercut, instead of dealing 5 damage, it now does 7. This means anytime I have an attack in my hand and I've played Embiggen, it's on the board somewhere, all my attacks basically have 2 modes, their basic value or their embiggened value. It's really fun, really interesting to think about, and that's what makes Miss Marvel complicated. At number 4, we have Star-Lord, and Star-Lord is a very easy character to have things go wrong, but you are kind of the, you have to orchestrate your own destruction. He takes encounter cards to get benefit, but it's very easy to take too many encounter cards, take them at the wrong time, or take them in an inefficient manner, because Star-Lord is a combo character. He wants to use his helmet, he wants to use sliding shot, he wants to use gutsy move to be powered up from these encounter cards. And the more things you're powering up from his encounter cards, the better it is to take them. Daring Escape is a setup piece for the other combo cards, but a lot of the time I always see people play Daring Escape just to solve a problem. Oh, I need 2 more forwarding to take up this side scheme. Let's do it. Oh no, there's another encounter card in front of me, and it's okay because in some cases you can deal with it, but it's very bad in other cases because it will overwhelm you. Sometimes the board just gets overwhelmed. Sometimes there are too many attacks and things, and you'll just lose the game before you're able to respond to them. Normally, I do think it is worth using his hero ability, but there are times where you won't. That will depend on your deck, the other players at the table in multiplayer, the villain, the mod sets, what cards are currently in the discard pile or the encounter deck, and you can look in the discard pile to figure out what's left in the encounter deck. It's very, very complicated to play Star-Lord to his maximum potential, in my opinion. Of course, you can just rush with him, especially in standard play, especially in solo play. There's different ways you can play him, and he's definitely a character that's harder than most. Up next, we have Psylocke, and we're back to the mutants, and she is complicated but fun. So she has these 2 Psy energy upgrades. They are weapons. They start in Psy knife form. They are identical. And on the other side, they are Psy katanas. And on one side, they give her plus forwarding. On one side, they give her plus attack. So depending on which way around they are, she can have 3 forwarding, 3 attack, or 2 of each, and that is a puzzle in itself, and you can change them by basic attacking or forwarding, or defending, which is less commonly used, but it's still kind of relevant for the kind of, odd occasion. But it gets more complicated than that, because both of those upgrades, which give her different stats, also generate resources, and on each side they generate a different type of resource, energy and physical respectively. That's also a whole thing which can be relevant, but what's maybe more relevant is how they interact with her events. Her events care about what side your psi energy weapons are. So if they're both in the katana form, they'll do one thing. If they're both in the knife form, they'll do something else. And if you've got one of each, they'll do a little bit of both. So effectively, pretty much all her events have 3 different forms, 3 different variations, depending on which way you've got things. So trying to get multiple of her events played with the exact optimal results you want, while using her stats in the way that you want, or maybe readying up and using her stats in a different way that you want or something, you know, there's just a lot going on before we even talk about her synergy with skill traded cards and things. And really all those moving pieces talking together is what makes Psylocke complicated. We're down to the final 2 now. So before that, a couple of runners up, some honorary mentions. There was honestly like 20 of these I wanted to mention, but we're gonna have to cut it down. But my top 2 that we're gonna have to try and decide between starts with Domino. Domino has so many ways to move cards around. She can use her hero ability to move cards from the top of her deck with her hand, her alter ego from the discard pile to her hand, Pip the Pug from discard pile to deck. Painted Lady will catch anything you discard, and if she wants to discard a lot from the top of her deck, that's kind of her main mechanic. And then you can get that put into your hand at a later time. Her events want wild resources on top of her deck, ideally. So trying to line things up, but also draw things the right way. And there's so much going on that makes Domino very complicated. Although a bit like I just said for Angel, you can play her quite well without too much difficulty, but really optimizing her and getting the most out of every turn takes a lot of effort. And in a very similar vein, also on the kind of mutant kind of topic again, we have Magik, who's the other character who really cares about the top of their deck. Magik plays with the top of her deck, that card face up so you can see it, and she can play it for discount. This is complicated in itself because, yeah, okay, I just play that card for a discount because I can, you probably want to do that. But if you have card draw or ways to discard or move cards and put them on top of her deck, which she has multiple ways generally, you kind of have to choose, what do I want to play from the top of your deck? Because you can only do it once, and you can maybe play a card from the top of your deck, reel the card beneath it. Oh, I wish I'd have saved it, and I wish I could have played that card from the top of my deck instead. But on the other hand, you could maybe take a risk, draw that card or discard it or whatever, and then a new card is revealed, and you think, oh, I really wish I'd played the other card from the top of my deck. So there's a lot of judgment involved, and managing what's coming up, what you've got. There's a lot to that alone. But she has Limbo, which lets her move a card from her hand to the top of her deck, swap them, just like Domino's hero ability, which is pretty complicated as well, because now you have that same kind of puzzle of being able to move things around. She has things like Stepping Disc, her alter ego ability, Scrying. They can all move things around as well, and her events and upgrades all care about what's on top of her deck. A little bit like Domino's, although slightly different, but some of her things want physicals, energies, mentals. They don't always line up. Sometimes you want something on top of your deck for one card, but a different thing for another. Though sometimes 2 things want the same resource icon, and it's fine if you've got a wild on top of your deck, but otherwise, you're going to have a fun time dancing around trying to get everything to line up. Generally, I would say Domino has more choices to make, which is more complicated, but since she has more ways to move things around, it's also slightly more forgiving, and she also has more things that get set up on the board. She can give you more things to activate every turn, but also a lot of your power is kind of locked in and not reliant on you doing the right thing every turn because you've got everything kind of set up in front of you, whereas Magik is a lot more reliant on the fewer decisions she makes being the right decisions, and it's kind of a different puzzle every turn. I think Magik's decisions are maybe more important, but Domino has more of them, and it's really difficult to rank that. Ultimately though, because I think there are so many ways to move things around, so many different variations, I made this in my Domino review, this monstrous chart kind of thing, which is still incomplete. There are more things you can do and move than this. Long story short, I think Domino just takes it, but it could go either way depending on certain different criteria. So Domino is, in my opinion, the most complicated character in Marvel Champions, followed by Magik, Psylocke, Star-Lord, Miss Marvel, Special Doctor, Colossus, Shadowcat, Storm, and Rogue. So let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you kind of mostly agree, but the order a bit different? I think it's going to be different for everybody, but this is my interpretation. Let me know if I missed anyone obvious. Let me know what you guys want next. Maybe I'll do another top 10 or something. I'm not sure. But thank you so much. If you want to get involved in the conversation, links to the Discord are down below. We almost have 150 members there, which is crazy. If you're interested in supporting the channel more than liking and sharing and so on, please go ahead and look at the Patreon membership or YouTube membership. But no pressure. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.